Help give kids an extra life by donating today to help sick and injured children. Link in the description and pinned comment below.
Trick or treat, games get beat.
Well, it's that time of year again. Halloween, the time for candy, costumes, and creatures of the night. And once again, it's time to revisit one of my old standbys, Castlevania. I mean, with the franchise back in the public consciousness right now, I figured now is as good a year as any. But wait, you might ask. This is a QG at the arcade month. Are you saying there's a Castlevania arcade game? Yep. Although you might be forgiven for not knowing it, not only because it's obscure, but because it only bears the name in Japan, Akuma Joe Dracula. But the game isn't called Castlevania in America, it's called Haunted Castle. Man, talk about a generic name. What's the matter, they couldn't just call it Castlevania? Anyways, this is a very loose adaptation of the original Castlevania on NES, attempting to bring the challenge of the original to an arcade setting. But the question is it any good? Well, that's exactly what we're gonna see.
Now, as you can see, I'm doing this in costume because it's the season of Halloween after all. Besides, if you want to tackle old arcade games like this, for example, and really do them justice, you gotta be the nerd.
Now, this wasn't the first attempt to bring Castlevania to arcades. That would be Versus Castlevania, which was released in North America in April of 1987 on Nintendo's Versus System arcade hardware. This arcade system, first used in 1984, was inspired by Sega's Convertigame system from the early 80s, and was actually the first use of the Famicom hardware in North America. The hardware was also successful, and in fact the success of this hardware helped pave the way for the release of the NES in North America in 1985. Some games, such as Castlevania, were actually released on this hardware before their North American NES release. One thing to note was that games that were ported to the Versus system were noticeably harder than their NES counterparts, and some games looked a bit different as well. In the case of Versus Castlevania, the enemies dealt more damage on normal difficulty, the time limit was much stricter, the color palette was brighter, and less bonus points were given at the end of levels, which meant fewer extra lives.
And you know what that means? Yeah, that means more game overs, which means more quarters spent trying to beat the game. But if you think that was cheap, well, we'll see about Haunted Castle.
The game was developed on a custom JAMA-based board in about 6 months according to a former staffer at Konami, and released at the tail end of 1987 in America, and a couple months later in Japan, unlike what usually happens with releases like these. So let's pop a quarter in the slot and start this fucker up. So we got this cool looking title screen with a menacing tune as the title fades away to reveal Dracula's evil mug. Yeah, let me whip that sucker in the face. We open with a cutscene of Simon having just gotten married. Never thought I'd see Simon in a suit, when all of a sudden, flashing colors herald the arrival of Dracula. Don't you just hate it when an evil vampire lord abducts your bride on this, the day of your wedding? So the gameplay starts and everything looks a lot more detailed than the NES. Too bad Simon walks like he has to take a shit. If the movement were simply clunky, I'd pass it off as just a product of its time, but it actually feels a bit slower compared to the NES. And don't get me started on walking up and down stairs. And that constipation must be really bad. Anyways, damage you take depends on what hits you. Bats deal 2 damage, while a Raven can knock off 4 damage. And with as big a hitbox as you have, you'll be hit often. So we come to a point where chunks of the wall start coming at you. It's like the Yellow Devil from Mega Man. And getting hit by a stone knocks off half your health. It's easy to lose a life here. Wait, game over?
That's it? 1 life? In a Castlevania game? You gotta be kidding me!
That's right, this isn't 3 lives like on the NES. You die once and you gotta continue. Okay, let's try this again. Damn it! Dead again. Okay, one more time. Shit! Okay, not giving up. Crouch and whip like crazy. Yeah, music started again. Wait, no! Fuck! Okay, gotta continue again.
What were they thinking?
Limited continues? In an arcade game? That's right, you can't just keep pumping quarters in the machine. 3 continues, that's it. Man, what a shitload of fuck. But hey, there's a way around that. You can actually add 16 health by adding another coin and pressing start. Of course, you can only do this 3 times, but it almost seems like a necessity. Okay, I've made some more progress, got past the Brick Devil, made it over some flames, whipped some more enemies for hearts and bombs. Yeah, no candles in this game. You get your power-ups from enemies. So we get past dryads and zombies and bats, and the first boss is Medusa. She's simple enough, jump over the snakes, chuck a few bombs, and boom, she's finished. No Orb of Light, no end of level bonus, we just check the map and boom, we're off to the next level. Here we got skeletons which release spirits, fishmen, bottomless pits, rolling rocks.
No, not the beer.
So we get up to a skeleton dragon that actually has the skin on it, and boy does he deal a ton of damage. Left with 1 health, but I make it up the stairs and deal with a mudman. Wait, he can reproduce? Ah, damn it. Well, at least I can continue, right? Well, guess what? When you heal using coins, it counts against your continues. Out of heals, out of continues.
At least that's how it was in the initial arcade release, but lucky for my nerddom, I have a secret weapon. This game is also available on the Konami Arcade Classics collection, as well as an Arcade Archive standalone, and those versions have unlimited continues. You know, like they should have had to begin with.
So we make it back to where we were, get past the Mudman, make our way across a bunch of dead trees dealing with bats and another dragon, and at the end we come up against a big bone dragon that's way too long to jump over. Strangely, the watch works on it so we can just go to town. Oh yeah, the sub-weapons are a bit different. They include bombs, a boomerang that doesn't come back, the classic watch, and a cross that makes bosses a joke. Anyway, once we beat the dragon, the drawbridge lowers and into the castle. By the way, at the end of levels, hearts are used from your stock to refill your health. Look, I had 19, now I have 6. So stage 3, and Bloody Tears is playing. And Hunchbacks somehow take 2 hits to deal with. So I have to make progress slowly because I'm looking behind my back every 2 seconds, when all of a sudden I'm warped to this weird dimension where a couple of harpies come after me. So I deal with them and I'm right back in the castle. So what was the point of that except to waste time? So after we pass a portrait crying, well, bloody tears, we find that even the food is trying to kill me. And I'm not talking food poisoning either. The food is literally coming after me.
What kind of world is this where you can't even trust food?
So I barely manage to reach the stairs and this ghost drops a sword. Hey, it's better than having it thrown at me by a woman in a lake. Yeah, another thing I forgot to mention, upgrades to your whip are really rare in this game. Unlike in your standard regular Castlevania game, where they're relatively easy to come by, you hardly see them at all in this game. Anyways, we're headed downstairs to the castle chapel where a soldier forms out of stained glass. Yeah, I'm not surprised. This is vampire and ghost business. And the hunchbacks keep coming. Can't I fight a giant stained glass monster in peace or something? Anyway, stage 4 brings us to the catacombs, and despite the fact that we start facing right, we actually have to go to the left. Yeah, good conveyance there, game. The mummies here can do quite a bit of damage if you don't deal with them right away, not just from contact, but from the bandages they throw. Truth be told though, the bouncing eyes are even worse. Another major problem in this game is that the screen will never scroll left or right until it's done scrolling up or down, which means that there are several cases where you outrun the screen, leaving you blind to what's ahead until the screen catches up with you. And you'll need to do that for obstacles like these collapsing platforms above the bottomless pit. Eventually you get to a point where it looks like you need to continue to the right, but when you walk to the right, it leads nowhere. Well, guess what? You actually need to go up on the moving platforms. If I wasn't supposed to go right, then why did it look like I needed to go fucking right?
I think something's happening to me.
Well, now we're at the boss, and this is where things really start getting unfair. It's a chained-up rock golem, and you have to hit the head. The fact that it's constantly moving in and out of range is one thing, you just gotta be a little patient, no big. The problem is when it attacks you. It fires its huge rock fist at you, and it's way too big to be able to jump over. That's the problem with sprites being as big as they are in this game. It means that the enemies have bigger attacks, and you're a bigger target. Okay, so you can jump over it. You just have to be pixel perfect to do it. That is some bullshit. Stage 5 is the clock tower, and right away, we're gonna be entering concussion protocol. The floor scrolls up ridiculously fast, and the stone platforms that you rise into leave you pretty much no warning whatsoever, so by the time you see them above your head, it's already too late to avoid getting smacked on the noggin. The floor moves just too fast, and you move too slow to avoid anything. So unless you have the pattern absolutely memorized, your face is gonna end up like the Street Fighter II Continue screen.
Now it would be fine if it wasn't so fast and you actually had time to react properly!
The rest of the stage is pretty unremarkable, but if you can get the cross, get it! It melts bosses like a hot dagger through butter. And you'll need it for Frankenstein's monster. Otherwise, the concussion you already got at the start of the level will only get worse from the magnitude of falling bricks from the ceiling. It boils down to get the cross, kill the boss, get the cross, kill the boss. The final stage is a straight shot left into Dracula's chamber across the bridge, but despite looking simple, it's arguably the worst designed stage in the whole game. You'd think it's just a straight shot, but two things ruin it. First, the bats. If you try to jump over them, more times than not, they'll hit you, costing you valuable health. But unless you time a jump attack perfectly, you'll have to stop to whip them, which leads to the second problem. The bridge is constantly collapsing behind you. So you have to decide, do I jump and attack and risk taking the hit leaving me with less health for the final boss? Or do I attack from the ground and let the collapsing bridge get closer to dumping me? How is that good level design? And after all that, it's down to Dracula himself. Throwing knives instead of fireballs and turning into a swarm of bats to rush you makes him seem dangerous, but again, he folds to the cross. And that includes his final form, which is just his giant head spewing bats at you. Well, at least after that, Simon won't have to go through that castle ever again.
Is this Dracula's curse? Or the curse of being a nerd? Because dressing up in this costume has somehow attracted the first shitty arcade game I've had to review. I mean, Ghosts and Goblins was frustrating, yeah, but at least that wasn't outright terrible, but this is freaking horrible!
You'd think that a Castlevania game in arcades would be amazing, especially for the time. The sprite work is surprisingly detailed for the late 80s, and the backgrounds look good as well. Not to mention, the music is awesome. From iconic themes like Bloody Tears, to themes like Cross Your Heart and Don't Wait Until Night that would later show up in future Castlevania titles, the soundtrack is classic Castlevania at heart.
So the presentation of this game looks and sounds like a treat, but in reality, it's just one big trick.
It's bad enough that Simon's hitbox is so big that it's hard to dodge enemies and obstacles, and his slow movement makes conserving your health even harder, especially since the level design does everything it can to screw you over at any cost, which makes it even more fucked up that you only get one life and limited continues. That is a sin for arcade gaming, especially for an arcade platformer. Yeah, you can trade your continues for extra health, but that's like putting a gangrene-infected band-aid on a vampire bite. When they said this game wasn't given enough time for balance, my response would have been, gee, what was your first clue?
Now, arcade games are designed to keep you putting quarters in the machine, but Haunted Castle is so blatant in its efforts to suck up your coins, it's like the machine had a vacuum pointed straight in your pocket. I'd rather get my dick bitten off by Dracula while Death's scythe gets shoved up my ass. I'd rather play Castlevania the Adventure on Game Boy, or hell, even Castlevania Legends than have to deal with this shit. I'd rather play any Castlevania game than this. Okay, not that one. Is this really all that Castlevania fans got from the arcade?
Well, as fortune would have it, no. It turns out there's actually another Castlevania arcade game, one which actually bears the name of Castlevania. It's called Castlevania the Arcade, and it was released, appropriately enough, in October of 2009. But only in Japan. There was a European release planned, but it was only location tested in 2008. Now, unlike your typical Castlevania platformer, this game takes the form of an on-rails light gun game, not unlike House of the Dead, which I talked about in a previous Halloween video. Of course, instead of a typical gun, you have an accessory fashioned like a whip handle with two buttons on it. You can choose between a vampire hunter, a lady gunner, and a little witch. To attack enemies, you swing the whip at them, or you point and shoot to fire sub-weapons. You obtain items and hearts from destroying boxes and candles and whatnot, and you face off against classic Castlevania bosses like Death and Dracula, while enjoying remixes of classic Castlevania tunes. Between levels, you can even power up your stats like attack power and max health. It's a unique, fun, and Castlevania experience, but there's one problem. It's rarer than a good game by LJN. And with the controller looking like a Wii remote, it begs the question, why wasn't this given a port on Wii, or at least with PlayStation Move? It would have worked perfectly. Now emulators have recently made this game playable to a wider audience, so if you're willing to put in the work, I say it's worth trying.
But still, the fact that you have to use emulation to get anything resembling a quality arcade experience with Castlevania is sad as hell. After all, what is Haunted Castle? A miserable little pile of frustrations and baffling design decisions. Seriously, how could Konami in the 80s come up with this piece of shit, especially after the original Castlevania? Fuck this game, it doesn't belong in this world! but I'll be a lot happier once the morning sun comes to vanquish this horrible night. I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, the arcade is closed.
Hey everyone, QG here. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Feel free to check out my Twitter and my Twitch streams, and consider supporting me through Patreon and donating to my Extra Life campaign to support Children's Wisconsin. Thanks for watching.